It happened about 3 years ago. I live in the United States. I was a 6'1", 210-pound, 23-year-old white male college student that was living in a predominantly Hispanic low-income neighborhood when this occurred. About 5 minutes after my Pizza Hut shift one night, I decided to walk across the street to buy a couple of tall boys at my local liquor store. I was excited about it being the weekend and getting to sleep in the next morning. I know, I had no life. So, as the cashier was handing me my bag of booze across the counter, a muffled yet short female scream reverberated throughout the store just from outside. I distinctly remember how pitiful it sounded. The cashier and I made that certain eye contact where you're both just like, what the? After a brief silence, he just shrugs his shoulders slowly and tells me to be careful getting home. I nod my head and start out after giving him a gracias from over my shoulder. I know it seems like we may have underreacted, but honestly, you see and hear a lot of crazy crap in this city, especially at night. So in addition to not wanting to get mixed up in something, you don't just call the cops over anything, especially a random scream. Even with that being said, thinking about how pitiful it sounded gave me a mixture of disgusted anger and cold fear. With my heart speeding up at this point, I opened the liquor store door slightly and looked around outside. After hearing and seeing nothing but traffic for about 15 seconds, I decided to start walking home, head down, eyes and ears open. But as soon as I rounded the liquor store corner, I was greeted by an obviously intoxicated but somehow steady, short Hispanic man with a scratched up face and really stretched out shirt. Assuming he was one of the few drunks that live in a small but dense patch of forest about 12 feet behind the store, I completely disregarded him and continued walking. At first, something about his behavior caught my attention. He looked extremely nervous and as if he were up to something. Also, I could hear a faint, almost non-existent gurgle-like sound coming from in the trees. Immediately, I began to suspect he had something to do with the scream I had heard just minutes before. Upon making eye contact, he caught on fast that I suspected him. "Está bien?" Spanish for "how are you?" he awkwardly asked me, smiling way too much and motioning me to follow him into the darkness behind the store. I pretty much told him to F off and continued walking home at a much faster pace now, looking behind me every 16 or so steps. I began wondering what the hell that noise was coming from the woods and why the man was acting so shady. Maybe I was overreacting though. Maybe the sound was just an old pipe or drain nearby. Maybe he really was just drunk and didn't want me to call the cops on him for public intoxication or something. I now wish, with everything within me, that I would have called the police then and there and went in the store and waited. About 5 minutes later, while walking down the particularly dark and isolated stretch of road about half a mile before my apartments, out of effing nowhere, the man I had just seen burst through some shrubbery about 12 feet from me on my back left, wielding an effing machete. That's right, a machete. Honestly, you can't make this crap up. I immediately went into panic mode and threw my beers at him and began running as fast as my legs could carry me toward my apartment building, hoping I had enough strength left within me to make it. I now realized I should have ran back toward the store as it was closer, but as I stated, he came from behind me and the rest is instinct. He was initially so close behind me, I swear I could hear the blade cutting the air as he swung at me from behind. I honestly expected a machete blow to the neck or head at any second. That is a very unique, very hard state of mind to be in, knowing that you could die at any moment. The worst, most gruesome thoughts of me being murdered began to fill my mind. Would I trip, only to have a defensive arm hacked right off before my eyes? Or would I be halfway decapitated mid-stride, falling hard and bleeding out as other parts of my body were cut away? Tears began to fill my eyes at the thought of how my family would feel knowing I was hacked to death, bleeding out on the side of a dark road alone. I began to scream, half out of desperation to live, the other half out of fear of not wanting to die such a horrible death. I know it sounds bitchy, but you can't really judge until you're being chased down by someone who literally wants to hack apart your body until you die. I'll try to shorten the story a little now. Yes, I eventually made it home. Some part of me knew I had lost the guy way before getting there, but my fear and adrenaline refused to let me stop running. I collapsed as soon as I had made it inside and tried to focus on not going into cardiac arrest from not only running so hard, but out of fear for my life. I tried to remember everything I had learned in the Army about 2-mile recovery drills. It helped a little. Anyone who's been in even a remotely similar situation can understand why I never called the police. After much needed water and heavy breathing, it was 30 minutes before I could even put a chain of complete rational thoughts together due to the shock and mental physical exhaustion caused by what just happened. At which time the guy would be long gone. I remember all I could think about was how the hell I did not hear him getting that close to me after 5 whole minutes of walking, especially with him being under the influence and me being sober. Needless to say, after double checking all the doors and windows, I fell into a paranoid sleep, gripping a kitchen knife soon after. The next day, I came to find that a young teenage girl had been raped and killed behind the same store around the time I had been leaving the previous night. Her throat had been slit and her body dumped not far from where she had been raped. Every person that lived behind the store was tested against the semen found inside the girl's body, and not one was a match. As far as I know, the guy has never been caught. I'm 120% sure that the scratched face and stretched shirt on the man I had seen the previous night were remnants of the poor girl's futile attempt to fight off her rapist and killer, and that the suspicion he saw on my face was enough for him to want to kill me, as he must have thought I was a witness or something. The mother of the child had only sent her there to buy some orange juice for something she had been making for dinner that night. The liquor store was the closest carrier of orange juice in the area. I can't help but kind of feel guilty though, and I feel so horrible for the girl's family, especially the mother. If I had called the police then and there and went back inside, would he have been caught? I remind myself that things played out the way they did, and that I can't change the past. The worst part, though, is thinking that the gurgling sound I had heard was the girl trying to breathe, despite choking on her own blood mere yards from me. I'm almost certain this is true. Also, who in the world just carries around a damn machete? Is that what he used to cut the girl? Nevertheless, Michael Myers, machete-wielding rapist, lets it never meet ever.